it this way. If women and men go to the same work and they wake up at the same time and they do the same thing, who do you think gets paid more?
Who do you, just take a guess.
But just, if she already asked, but who do you think gets paid more? Okay, but is there any reason behind that?
No, right? Because if you do the same amount of work another person of another gender does, shouldn't you get the same?
Just know that women have a lot of responsibilities in this world, and they impact our world in many different ways.
We believe that in spite of the effective ways women impact society, they don't receive the same benefits as men in all aspects.
Like women products that women are more likely to buy are often like more expensive, like such as like shampoos and deodorants and socks.
There are many people who have stood up for women's rights, such as Sojourner Truth, Susan B. Anthony, and Sor Juana de la Cruz.
Women are not treated the same in property rights, voting rights, and they are even restricted from the freedom of speech.
In order to be successful, women must work harder than men, especially in the workplace. Women are also expected to behave a certain way and are limited to what they should or should not do.
Society should make an effort to gain more rights for women and accept their ideas and differences, and by looking at who they really are as equals.
It is already well known that unemployment is a very serious issue that veterans face coming home. They face this issue because employers are often reluctant on hiring veterans into their jobs, which I think is pretty ridiculous, but a variety of causes, which includes, but is not limited to, job search, skills mismatch, employer discrimination, and poor health are speculated to affect this.
And sometimes employers won't hire veterans just because the possibility they have PTSD, even if they don't actually have PTSD, which is unfair.
Some disabilities that veterans face is physical and mental. Some physical disabilities is that the loss of limbs, which may hinder their ability to do manual labor, so they might have to look forward to educational jobs.
Actually using classes to put the person back out into the job market, which actually helps the person have a living in a job. This doesn't usually happen because a lot of veterans are homeless.
It's a side effect of their PTSD because they suffer from depression from losing a loved one in the war.
An Air Force veteran for World War II, and he won his election by a big majority. So people might have, instead of think of him like disabled as a veteran, people might have thought he was a hero, which may be good for a president of the United States and sit in the most powerful office.
There's around 45% of all veterans that come home either suffer from homelessness or depression. These issues aren't good for any veterans because they serve for our country and fight for our freedom. We should all work together to try and overcome these issues and defend for our own veterans.
Our project is about special needs and understanding them.
People often think that people with special needs can't do certain things like walking or taking a test or simple tasks. And these weaknesses can create strengths in a person. So some of these people that we're talking about are people with autism, people with blindness, or the handicap.
The blind can range from being seen very little or not seen at all. And of course this can create lots of problems in the everyday life, like reading signs, menus, just anything that requires sight, right? But a lot of people have actually overcame this, such as Stevie Wonder. You know Stevie Wonder, the blind musician? Yeah, he sold many albums, has earned many Grammys, and so we actually have some music here to demonstrate a deaf person, if you guys want to try.
And then it's hard, we talk about the different disabilities like autism, and then disabled people like having a limb or something. So for some of our interactives, we have where we write, where you could only use 2 fingers, and it shows how hard it is to for some people, because some people don't even have their hand. And then we have another one, which is the whisper challenge, which shows people what it's like to be deaf and how hard it is to read people's lips. And then for our last one, we have the glasses with the Vaseline, which shows how hard it is for blind people and people that are visually impaired to see items like a card.
When Taylor
first was in school, she was made fun of by cliques because she wasn't cool enough or popular enough for them, and that she liked country music. But she kept to her passions, and she's now really successful because of it.
Well, these cliques are defined by what people wear, what they do, and who they hang out with. Sometimes people find themselves, hey, I fit in with this clique, but then they might find themselves, hey, I'm changing myself for this clique. Maybe, I don't know, maybe I should leave.
Stereotypes are imposed on groups of people based on their nationality, gender, age, and whatever a person has or has hobbies.
So these types of stereotypes can be negative, sound negative, or positive. A positive stereotype would be, oh, since you have glasses, you must be super smart. But what if you instead don't like mathematics as much, but you focus more on sports and arts? And so that sets like an expectation that you can't exactly reach. And so that's how a positive stereotype can have a negative influence. And then stereotypes such as, oh, if you play football, then you must not be good at school, and you must be like super aggressive, and you might be a bully. Those types of stereotypes also separate people and cause people to stop interacting with each other.
When a person feels like they don't fit into any of the cliques, or they fit into all the cliques, they'll become isolated because of this, or they will choose to be isolated because none of their interests are fit into the clique that they're in.
So if you see someone out there and like they're isolated, like let's say there's like a really tall football player, he's like so buff, he holds himself as like arrogant, and like no one approaches him because of this. Would you approach him?
Honestly, I wouldn't want to approach him.
Yeah, that's totally fine, but social group acceptance believes that you should always accept people no matter what they look like and how they reach themselves, because they might be like super nice inside, you know what I mean?
Our booth is religious tolerance. So Judaism, Christianity, and Islam are the three most discriminated religions right now in the U.S. So religious intolerance is a lack of respect for another person's religious beliefs and values. And though people that disrespect others' religions have a strong belief that only their morals are accurate. So an example of religious intolerance is since the 9/11 attacks, Muslims have been highly discriminated with the negative stereotypes and such. So if we raise awareness about this important issue, we can make sure that the people that are affected by this religious intolerance, their voices can be heard around the world, and we can help end this religious intolerance.
What we're trying to do is show people that, hey, we may be like different, but in our beliefs. Like, let's say I'm Sikh. What religion are you? I'm Mormon. You're Mormon. See, we have different beliefs, but that doesn't make me any better or any lower than you are for no reason, right?
Discrimination, being forced from your home, arrest, violence, stereotypes, verbal attacks, and inclusion in social life.
You guys have any questions for us?
So this is the first scenario. A Muslim verbally attacks a Jewish person because of their religion, tolerant or intolerant. You got it. What religion are you?
Christian.
You know what kind?
Catholic.
Catholic? What kind? What religion are you?
I'm Christian Mormon.
You're Mormon? Yeah. Just because you're Catholic, you're not getting.
It's pretty nasty.
Okay. How did you feel when we didn't give you any candy? Did you feel pretty bad? That's how people feel every day because of religious intolerance. Here, you can take one. You should make a difference.
And we're trying to get the point across that, hey, no matter what you believe in, no matter how different we may be, we're still equal. Alright, so we're going to place a box in front of you, and you're going to have 30 seconds to fit 5 shapes into the box. Now, the symbolism of this activity was that the box was supposed to represent a drug rehabilitation center.
If you don't do it in the time, then you're probably it's gonna get worse and worse every time.
Were you feeling stressed while you were putting them in?
Yeah.
The stress is like stress that drug rehabilitation patients have to cope with in their everyday life.
Thoughts of suicide, depression, guilt, and many more negative feelings. Like this person, he just wants to he's so sad. And he's on the street too. They're labeling him as an addict. But you have Ashton to talk more about the optics.
And these pictures show how drug addicts feel. They feel isolated. And this shows how drugs can affect even the highest of power.
Although this simulation wasn't as nearly as what you would face in drug rehabilitation, it shows the main points of how drug rehab patients what they have to face.
One such law is the Americans with Disabilities Act, and it basically protects people undergoing drug rehabilitation from discrimination in employment or housing, but it isn't perfect, unfortunately, because it requires you to be fully rehabilitated and take drug tests. And there's also, if you're currently doing drugs, it doesn't work for you. Also, there's something called the Fair Housing Act, which is exactly what it sounds like, but that has similar limitations, so we do need better laws.
Remember, if you see a person who's undergone drug rehabilitation, don't think that they're just some person who didn't try, they made mistakes and they want to get back into their life. Please step into their shoes and understand the circumstances that were put onto them. Thank you.
Our group is Racial Intolerance, and we're going to be teaching about 3 races that have faced a lot of hate just for being their race. The 3 races are Native Americans, African Americans, and Asian Americans.
We're trying to talk to each student about how it's affected lots of different races, such as the Japanese Americans, Native Americans, and African Americans. And what I wanted to talk about is a lot of Native American sports teams. It's always enforcing these different stereotypes about these Native Americans, and some of them are really bother the Native American tribes a lot.
Even afterwards, after the Emancipation Proclamation was passed, there were still a lot of loopholes to discriminate against the African Americans. This included things like whites-only signs, which would basically group together whites and African Americans, and whatever the African Americans had was usually worse.
Now, these African Americans were sold as slaves. Slavery is basically when a specific individual is sold as property and treated like property. The African Americans were sold to the white men. They were beaten constantly, they lacked rights, and they basically were just property.
The Southerners still didn't want to see themselves as equal to the African Americans, so they set up Jim Crow, which basically was an era where even though the slaves were freed, they still had a lot less rights. And so Asian Americans, after more specifically Japanese Americans, after Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, the U.S. declared war on the Japanese, and all West Coast Japanese Americans were forced into internment camps where some families were crammed into single rooms.
And life in these internment camps was basically awful. Entire families lived in rooms built for only one person.
Our topic is social and poverty and social class acceptance, and basically it's about accepting people for not their financial status.
There's actually 43 million people that were in poverty. One main misconception is that all people in poverty are homeless and unemployed, but really they're just having a hard time finding a stable job.
A common misconception about people in poverty is that they're lazy and unmotivated. This is not necessarily true, since many of the people in poverty cannot get jobs due to economic factors.
This one kind of represents society right here, and a man who's trying to help a homeless person, but since society is being so consistent with trying not to help them out, where they're pushing the man away from trying to help him.
You can also volunteer at organizations like food pantries. One organization is on here somewhere. It's called Feeding America. And what's cool about that organization is that the people that go there feel welcome, and that's one step towards getting the confidence to escape poverty and its grasp.
Would it be okay if I pass out a test? Sure. You have 30 seconds. When I say go, you flip it over. Ready? Set. Go. Go. Okay, so oh my god, yours are so good. Oh my god. I like your glasses. Your shirt is so cute. I love your clothes. Oh my god. So how'd you guys feel?
I couldn't really concentrate.
So that's a symptom of ADHD, right? That's what we're trying to do for our mental health understanding, to show more compassion towards those who have mental illnesses.
People with mental health disorders, they're harder to find and they're harder to see physically in people, so that's why they're discriminated against.
Because they always get hate and stigma, so that's why it's always important to avoid it, because sometimes it can even lead to suicide. And of course, it's really unfortunate when a person takes their own life just because they're hated upon.
Ellen DeGeneres, you often associate her as happy all the time, but she has depression. And other people like J.K. Rowling, who based her Dementors from the Harry Potter series off of her story of depression. So this illness is very difficult, but it can be overcome.
We need to understand that mental illnesses are a real thing that people suffer with. They're not just an excuse or something made up, but they're real and it affects people's daily lives.
Mob mentality is when individuals within a community think as one mind, and they cause segregation between each other because they suppress logic, common sense, and reasoning, and they can become very chaotic very fast.
They're saying that all mobs are consisting of people. But when they join a mob, they lose their individuality. They lose their sense of thinking themselves. They just get influenced by the mob.
Basically, the activity is when we have half the people go as dogs and half the people go as cats, and they could choose which one they want, which one they prefer. And then on the back, you have the cons about the other group and the pros about this one. So first, they have to read this area off and say why the other group is bad. So this is getting the point where it gets more violent.
Generate a lot of conflict.
Yeah, and people will come in from different groups.
And you have to realize, hey, look, this is basically pointless. This argument, this anger is pointless. It's about cats and dogs. It's not going to change anything.
Mobs can cause segregation because you're insulting someone, and it could also cause another mob because when you're insulting someone, if everyone else joins you, that could cause another mob, and that could result in chaos.
The call to action activity is based on the interactive activity that we did with the cats and dogs. So it shows how people could stand out in the crowd and view their own opinions without looking at the crowd and freely expressing their opinions without having to follow the crowd in a mob mentality.
Our group is what Kimberly said. It's LGBTQ plus acceptance. Our posters show events where the LGBTQ plus community fight for their equality, or where people are just simply asking to be accepted for who they are.
We're wearing these because it represents how we're all just human, and we shouldn't look at each other as different. We shouldn't label each other because it doesn't. Our labels don't define who we are. It's our personality.
So whichever one of you is gonna wear the heart necklace.
What this represents is a label being put on you because society usually puts labels on the LGBT community.
About 15 to 20% of LGBTQ plus teens are homeless, and it's because they're always abused and homeless.
So can you give some examples of why there'd be so many teens that are homeless in this
LGBTQ community? Do you know okay, so most of them are abused by peers, by their family members, because they get judged for being who they are. Some people run away because they just can't handle the stress and how they can't be accepted by being who they are, like bisexual, transgender, etc. And some of them even commit suicide because it's so stressful. Like they can't handle the abuse and stress they get from peers, family, friends.
It's really hard for them because they go to school every day and sometimes kids aren't accepting there and so they get bullied. Then they come home and they don't have acceptance there. Their parents don't treat them right and they just don't belong anywhere. So they feel just so alone and empty.
So do you guys have any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much, you guys. Have a great day.
People with invisible illness, they have lots of false accusations and unwanted pity. And to reverse that, they're trying to send more compassion towards them.
You can just bottle flip it and just do it with your opposite hand. Pretty good. You want to do it again? Hey, good job. So the bottle flip represents, the bottle itself, it represents how the daily activities of a person with invisible illness, and for example stroke, they're unbalanced and they don't really have sense of control. So that's what we're trying to represent for stroke.
The bottle flipping represents daily tasks that people have to deal with, and it was a little bit harder for her to bottle flip, right? So people with chronic conditions have trouble in daily lives doing their daily tasks because they have to deal with their struggles and their chronic condition.
There's people who go to the handicap and you know how parking's terrible and we all have to look for it. Yeah. So when you go to the parking, handicap is right near the door, and if someone comes out of it and you see that they don't have a cane or something a wheelchair, they're oh my god, that person just took a parking or something, and they think that's unfair, but really they actually have an illness, but inside you can't see it at all.
Cyberbullying can happen anywhere, anytime, even in places you would normally feel safe, such as your household. The home invasion could
could be harmful to the victim because they feel they cannot escape the harassment.
We know that victims might want to consider suicide, but in reality, they are 2 to 9 times more likely to consider suicide.
Amanda Todd is an example of one of these cases. In the YouTube video she uploaded, Todd tells about her story through note cards. After showing her chest on an online video chat when she was 12, photos of it were released, which caused students to turn against her. After months, maybe years of self-harm, Todd resorted to suicide. Unfortunately, many of these cases do occur, including people such as Jessica Logan and Ryan Halligan.
In the event that interactions have already gone too far, then leaving the victim alone to heal would be the best solution. Nobullying.com also makes a note that an apology starts the healing process, but it cannot take away the event or lessen the hurt.
Platforms such as Facebook or Instagram allows people to title themselves whatever they want because they're anonymous. And also, Dr. Magliano also believes that being anonymous increases the likelihood to bully because there's no fear of retribution or any consequence.
It is important to understand why students engage in cyberbullying, and it is usually for popularity. Dr. Joe Magliano argues that cyberbullying can cause the bullies to feel funny, popular, or superior to their peers. And in the cyber media world where likability can be quantifiable, it makes them feel like likes and followers are more important than their decency to other humans.
Have you ever faced discrimination based on your culture? No? You? You have? How did it feel to be in that situation?
It felt kind of rude.
Was it uncomfortable?
Yeah, it was.
Did it make you upset?
Yeah.
What about you?
Well, for me, it made me feel like not great about myself, sort of.
Yeah, and we're trying to just flip that whole scenario and make you feel good and like proud that you're part of this culture.
Today we're going to be focusing on 3 main cultures, and it's the Latin American, Asian, and Middle Eastern cultures, due to the fact that these 3 cultures are highly discriminated against.
A huge problem that Latinos face is that they're labeled as illegal immigrants, and this is really hurtful because some Latinos come into the U.S. as political refugees, or they come here seeking opportunities.
Another culture that faces intolerance is the Asian American culture, and they're often stereotyped against and considered that we all look the same or that we're all good at math in school, and it's really offensive and hurtful to us since we're all considered one race when we're not. We're many different cultures.
The last culture is the Middle Eastern culture, and in the Middle Eastern culture, many people are said to be very terrorist because of the specific items they use in their culture, and such as the hijab, and many people identify that with being terrorist when that's not true and very stereotypical.
In an attempt to limit the intolerance many of these cultures face, the First and 14th Amendments were created, and the First Amendment basically just prohibits Congress from making laws that are for or against specific cultures, while the 14th Amendment makes sure that everyone has equal protection under the law regardless of their cultures.
Spread an act of kindness and show someone that you're tolerant and that you want to learn more about their culture. It's very good for them, and it's very good to show that to people because, you know, maybe they're having a bad day and you never know what they're going through, so it's good, and it's always good to show tolerance.
Body image acceptance has been a huge issue, especially lately with our exposure to the internet and the media and celebrities who are constantly influencing people to look a certain way or act a certain way.
Because of all of this happening, people have become anorexic, they've gotten plastic surgery.
Even men have this certain body image that they need to pursue. Like from an early age, guys are told that they have to have masculine bodies with a lot of muscles so they can protect girls and be cool. But in actuality, it's okay even if you're not. But a lot of guys think that they need to be like this. So when they try doing this through exercise and they can't, a lot of them resort to steroids, which is really bad for them.
People started to really focus on their physical appearance in the 1930s in Egypt, especially women. They would start to feel pressure to wear a lot of makeup to have the right figure to please men. Men in an early age would start to worry about their physical appearance because of all the input that they've been getting from their role models, family members, parents.
Our interactive activity is this little thing where we have all these different bodies and all these different heads. And then it's kind of a silly activity where you match the different heads to the different bodies. And it kind of shows how everybody has their own little body, and then that's the only way that they're going to look natural and they're going to look good. So trying to change that makes it look really funny and really weird.
Have you guys ever felt that when you go up to someone and start talking to them for the first time that you kind of judge them a little bit on how they look?
I mean, I know I have on accident, and it's not on purpose, but I always make a mental note to myself. It doesn't really matter what they look like, as long as I know that they really could be a really nice person on the inside.
You can help these people that are being affected by the body image acceptance when they're told that they're different by giving them moral support and telling them that they're perfect the way they are and they don't need to change to match what everyone thinks and everyone says beauty should look like.
We are the generation that has to make a change. Even the smallest, kind words helps a lot.